The DLSS hysteria is at an all-time high. The internet is currently in the middle of a collective meltdown. If you've spent 5 minutes on social media or checked the headlines from GDC, you've seen the screenshots. Yassified faces in Resident Evil Requiem, slop scaling accusations, and the general sentiment that NVIDIA is essentially trying to replace artistic intent with a generic filter. The gamer bubble has found its new villain, and it's DLSS 5. But let's calm down, because here's probably what you don't want to hear, but the reality. We are seeing a repeat of the DLSS 1.0 era. I know a lot of you guys don't remember this or probably just moved past it. But back then, everyone trashed the tech because it looked like, quote, Vaseline smeared all over the screen. Now you fast forward to DLSS 3.5, and it's got ray reconstruction, and it's the gold standard that even the staunchest of purists rely on to make path tracing playable. The current hissy fit that gamers are going over, DLSS 5, is largely a reaction to a coat of paint being applied to existing assets. When you see games like Starfield or Hogwarts Legacy that weren't built with that pipeline in mind, I can understand why it feels weird. But if we move past that rage bait of thumbnails, we're actually looking at the most significant visual leap in rendering since the introduction of hardware accelerated ray tracing. This isn't just a resolution bump anymore. It's a fundamental shift in how geometry and light are processed. And while the online crowd right now is screaming, most of them don't even have the hardware required to run it. Meaning the damage that they're worried about won't even touch their rigs. So my personal opinion is we all saw games that we liked, like Hogwarts Legacy and Resident Evil 9, and we saw this new coat of paint on it, and we blew up. That's not the game that we already love. But visually speaking, this is really next-gen technology. A true next-generation leap in graphics. Something like when we went from GameCube to Xbox 360. Yeah, it was a jump. To understand why this backlash is misplaced, if those had been games that were brand new and you had never seen art for it beforehand, you probably would have been blown away. Now, let's take a look at what Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said at GDC. The common misconception, fueled by some admittedly uncanny valley demos, is that DLSS 5 is post-processing a filter, kind of like Snapchat or Instagram filter over what already exists. People think that the GPU is just looking at the finished frame and guessing what a prettier face might look like on top of it. But it's not. See, according to NVIDIA, the DLSS 5 is operating at the geometry level. We're talking about a fusion of generative AI with the actual 3D meshes and texture. Traditional rendering is hitting a wall. We are reaching a peak in what is affordable in your gaming rig or even a console. We're seeing diminishing returns with raw graphical outputs and rasterization, and even in standard ray tracing. And with this RAM crunch, that just isn't a buzzword. It's a physical limit on how much data can be shoved through a bus. DLSS 5 uses generative AI to fill in the gaps of high fidelity geometry. that would otherwise be too heavy to render by your graphics card. When you see a character model that looks different, it's often because the AI is attempting to resolve detail that simply doesn't exist in the base assets of an older game. Think about it this way. If you take a brand new title, build it from the ground up with DLSS 5, the artistic vision will be baked right into the training model. Developers at Capcom or Bethesda aren't just letting random algorithms run wild, they are fine-tuning the generative input and building a new character model. When a game is designed with this tech as the primary rendering target, the results won't be uncanny, they will be close to photorealistic in a way that standard hardware simply cannot achieve it through brute force. Now, the question is, do you want that in your games? I'm sure some games will benefit from this, but imagine if we thought Wind Waker was gorgeous 20 years ago, imagine what something like this would do for cell shading. It would look like you're literally playing a Saturday morning cartoon. The massive irony in the current discourse is that a huge portion of the people that are dunking on this NVIDIA demo are running cards that couldn't even trigger a DLSS 5 handshake if they wanted to. The GDC report suggests that PC gaming is turning back into a rich person's hobby due to rising hardware prices and the disruptive RAM crunch caused by data farms. This is a valid concern, but it's being conflated with a technical one. High-end tech has always started at the top. The 4090 was mocked for its price and size, yet it's the only reason 4K path tracing is in the conversation that we can have. And DLSS 5 is a tool for the bleeding edge. If you're on a mid-range card from a generation or two ago, this tech isn't going to be ruining your games because guess what? You aren't the target audience for it. Now, Digital Foundry's initial assessment was actually fairly grounded. Despite the backlash that they've been receiving, they acknowledge that this is new rendering. We are moving away from pixels and toward intent. The outrage over Grace's face in Resident Evil is really a distraction from the fact that the lighting, global illumination, and material response in that demo were light years ahead of what we are seeing on current generation consoles. This brings me to the console wars or PC hybrid wars, which are about to get very lopsided. See, Microsoft's Project Helix was the elephant in the room at GDC. While Xbox was quiet about the specifics, we know that they are going to be integrating Copilot and deep AI functionality into the ecosystem. If Project Helix launches with a dedicated AI silicon capable of something close to DLSS 5, it effectively ends what next gen will truly look like. See, Sony and Valve and even Nintendo, but Valve with the Steam machine, are currently leaning heavily on what we can call last generation AI, which is just standard upscaling like FSR or earlier that focus on resolution reconstruction. It's a resolution bump strategy. It's a bandage on aging hardware. But if Microsoft can leverage its partnership with NVIDIA or its own internal AI research to implement generative geometry, Project Helix won't just be a stronger PC Xbox. It will be the only system on the market that would be capable of true next-gen visuals. Now, I'm not saying that the Xbox will do this, but they're the only ones currently in the position to do so. When you can use generative models to render complex environments that would normally require a 500-watt GPU, you can change the math for the hardware wars. Meanwhile, Valve is over at GDC showing off charts that more games are finding success, but as many critics have pointed out, those numbers are heavily padded by 10-year-old perennials like Counter-Strike and Dota 2, and only about 8.5% of new games in 2025 are actually hitting a $100,000 revenue mark. See, Valve is focused on store curation and discoverability, while their hardware, the Steam machine, it's at risk of being left in the dust technically. It's already weaker than a PS5. A Steam machine that relies on standard rasterization is going to look like a relic the moment generative AI consoles hit the shelves. The generative label has become a trigger word in the gaming community, and I get it. But the trigger is largely because it's associated with layoffs and slop of AI-generated art. But in the context of this new rendering pipeline, this is actually an evolution. We moved away from sprites to polygons. We moved from baked lighting to real-time rays. And now we're moving away from static geometry to generative fidelity. This hissy fit, it will eventually die down because a brand new game that uses this tech that you're not already in love with will blow your mind when it comes out. People will forget about the yassified Resident Evil faces the moment a brand new IP launches that looks indistinguishable from high-end film that's running at 120 frames per second on a single GPU because the AI will be doing the heavy lifting. Now, in my opinion, NVIDIA isn't destroying the artistic vision of gaming. They're going to be giving developers a way to bypass the physical limitations of modern hardware. If Sony and Valve stay stuck in the resolution bump era, while Microsoft moves into generative rendering with Project Helix, the power dynamic in the industry could shift faster than anyone expects. Now, mind you, it's the PC market. Consoles, we're not there yet. The future isn't about throwing more RAM at the problem. It's about rendering smarter. And DLSS 5, for all its early demo awkwardness, it's the first real look at what the future looks like. The first real look at next-gen graphics. Thank you guys for joining me here at Star Flag Media Gaming. Like, share, subscribe. Tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash and a lot of heat for that. But it is what I think. As always, thank you guys for joining me. And we will catch you in the next video. Peace.